Hello, today we're going to be talking about lionfish predation on deep sea gobies that reside within reef ecosystems. So our story begins here on an island called Curacao, or off the coast a bit more like, in the Caribbean Sea. So originally it was proven by Luke Tornabene's team in 2016 that some goby species had started occupying novel niches of deep reef ecosystems. And a few years later, lionfish were unnaturally introduced by aquaria into the Atlantic Ocean, and their pre-existing traits, such as fast regeneration time, specialized swimming mechanisms, amongst others, allowed them to quickly become a dominant and invasive reef predator. So because these gobies over here are a prey source of these invasive lionfish, migrating to the deep reef niches was ideal for these lionfish. And in 2017, Luke Tornabene's team observed that lionfish began preying upon these deep reef dwelling gobies. If these gobies populations are overexploited, though, it could potentially be detrimental to any ecosystem that the gobies are a part of because these fish are nutrient cyclers. They occupy lower trophic levels and are sources of nutrients for many different species besides lionfish. So if these goby populations are decimated by the invasive lionfish, there could be detrimental impacts and negative trophic cascades in both the shallow and the deep reef systems. Okay, so the and shallow part will come in a second. This right here is an image of a deep sea goby, and this is an example of a coral reef environment. So the hypotheses of our study were regarding lionfish found in the deep and shallow reef environments. So in this study, we wanted to assess how lionfish predation preferences differed between the shallow reef environment and the deep reef environment. This would allow us to see if an ecosystem at a certain depth was more susceptible to overexploitation of goby species by lionfish. And additionally, we wanted to see if the lionfish preyed on gobies with a specific type of pelvic fin, to see if one trait, fin type in this instance, made these fish more likely to be overfished by these lionfish. Okay, so in order to do this experiment, first, lionfish were collected from Curacao and then brought back to the lab. There, the lionfish stomachs were dissected and the gut contents were analyzed. And within those gut contents, or within the stomachs, we found that there were many different species of gobies. Some were known and some were unknown. To gain information regarding the spatial distribution of the foraging patterns and the preference of prey morphology or the preference of pelvic fin type of these lionfish, we looked at the genetic sequences of the unknown species of gobies found in the stomachs of the lionfish. Using the genetic information, we then created phylogenetic trees that compared the known species of gobies to the unknown species of gobies. And because we already knew the traits and the habitat type of the known species of gobies, we can then determine where the lionfish were foraging and which kind of gobies these lionfish were preying upon. So here's just an example of one of the phylogenetic trees. As you can see in the pink writing that is up here, this is a tree of all the gobies found in the deep reef lionfish, and then over here, and like coming down here in the pink writing, those are all the newly determined traits of the unknown species of gobies. And here's another tree for a shallow reef, or a lionfish collected in a shallow reef. And just to quickly go over our results from those phylogenetic trees, we noticed that the majority of lionfish within the deep reef and shallow reef habitats preyed on gobies with both united or fused pelvic fins and separated pelvic fins. Here we have a united pelvic fin or fused pelvic fin picture, but there's also separated. So both of those were found in the majority of the lionfish stomachs. Next, we wanted to look at the foraging depths of these lionfish. So we found that all deep reef dwelling lionfish that were collected in gobies from both shallow and deep reef habitats in their stomach. And from this, we concluded that these lionfish forage in both reef habitats. We also noticed that the shallow reef dwelling lionfish stomachs contain solely gobies of shallow reef habitats, hinting that these lionfish only forage within this habitat. So some takeaways. We looked at the depth preference of these lionfish and whether or not they were foraging in shallow or deep reef environments. And then we also looked at prey morphology, or the pelvic fin type that the gobies within the lionfish stomachs had. Some limitation to our experiment was that we did have a rather small sample size of only 11 lionfish collected. So future studies could look at a larger data pool, and it could also look at depth-specific adaptations that could be increasingly prevalent in these lionfish. And additionally, we need to help mitigate the negative impacts of goby overexploitation by mitigating the size of the lionfish populations within these reef ecosystems that they are potentially negatively harming. Thank you.